Hello and welcome into another edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We thank you very much for tuning in. We are sitting here in the studio. It is the day before Thanksgiving, and I have another special guest on. Anthony's still out in Michigan celebrating the turkey holiday, and we have Dave. Dave is on the line. He's going to be joining us for the podcast. Dave, how's it going over there in the East Coast?
Fantastic. Nice, crisp, cool weather. Getting ready for a little turkey feast. Things are good.
That sounds good. It's still a nice, 60 degrees over here. No signs of snow, so we're having a good time. I got D-Ray behind the glass. She's back with us. She decided to stick and stay, so we appreciate her coming on. Hey, what's up, D-Ray?
Hello.
So there's been a lot going on in the last couple of days since we had our last podcast. In the last episode, we talked a little Baker Mayfield and the antics he had on the field. And I know, Dave, you weren't a part of that podcast, but I think you and I share the similar viewpoints in the fact that what are your thoughts on what went on Saturday in Kansas?
Well, first of all, I think looking at the big picture of what started it, Baker Mayfield, he does a lot of antics. I mean, the guy is just supercharged. And I think as a football player, that's what you want. Someone that's supercharged, leads the team, goes out there, rah-rah. Some of the stuff he does may be questionable and stuff, but at the start of the game, watching the Kansas players snub him, I think that pretty much goes against all the rules of sportsmanship and conduct that the NCAA has been trying to portray that they all observe and adhere to. I mean, they even run commercials on TV about, in a specific game, how their Big 12 or their Big 10, they all play for sportsmanship and stuff. And to see that happen and then to see the coach afterwards in question about it, and I forget his name, which he won't be there next year, so he's insignificant anyway. But to just see him nonchalantly, boys will be boys. I mean, this is the kind of attitude that has entered into sports. It needs to go away. I mean, it's just stupid. It was disrespectful to Oklahoma. It was disrespectful to the fans of Oklahoma. It was disrespectful to the fans of Kansas to watch their team act like that. And it was disrespectful to the entire college and university as a whole.
Yeah, I think the whole lack of sportsmanship shows the concepts and the values of a losing program, and that's what Kansas is. They're a losing football program.
You're right. I mean, what? One game, they won one game, none in the Big 12. Look, if you're 10-1, the same position at Oklahoma, go ahead. All right, now we've got a game. Okay, now it makes sense. But when you're a losing program and you probably only had a band and maybe a few parents sitting in the stands, stop. Just stop it.
Yeah, I mean, you flip the script and, if the Oklahoma team would have done that to Kansas, obviously being a far superior opponent, in your eyes, would that have affected the playoff committee's view of Oklahoma football? I mean, I know that we're supposed to, the on-field performance, that happens, while the clock is moving, but I feel like if Oklahoma wouldn't get that pass, now even as bad as Kansas is, I think their coach should be fired for that.
Well, I think the coach should be fired. I don't think you see a school like Oklahoma do that because it is a traditional school of winning, of higher class. Kansas has a football team because Kansas has a university. Let's face it, football is not their big booster push there. It's basketball, has been, always will be. But if you're going to have it, adhere to at least some sort of ethics and run the program correctly. And this could have just been a coach that knows he's gone. Didn't care. They probably came to him. I'll guarantee you that conversation happened before the game started. Coach, we're going to snub him. And his thought is, well, I don't care. I'm not going to be here next year anyway. So sure, go ahead, do whatever you want.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're a college football coach at a Power 5 conference, you would think, whatever your actions or whatever your team's actions still carry with you. I mean, I would assume he wants to get another gig. So, yeah, I think that he might have said he doesn't care. And if he says that, I think that really, looking at other programs, that would show the true character of this coach. I wish I got his name up here. I'll probably get the correct research test so we can actually stop calling him the Kansas coach, because I don't even know. Other than Charlie Weiss.
Well, you won't even call him that next year.
Other than Charlie Weiss, I feel like a Kansas coach.
I see what your point is, but this guy will not be coaching major next year.
No, he won't be
let's
a head coach, but your track record follows you. No. These coaches don't forget.
Yeah.
David Beatty. Yeah. I got the correct research staff on it. David Beatty. D-Ray, what are your thoughts on? I know you talked about it in the last podcast. I mean, do you think that this coach should be fired for something that, letting your team go out there and show such poor sportsmanship?
No, I don't think that's fair.
You don't think that's fair? I mean, you're the head football coach. Everything goes through you, and if you were made aware of that, which he'll never admit to it, if you're made aware of the fact that your team's going to go out there and be a dick to one of the, top players in the nation, I don't know. I think you either have to do something to stop it, or your character is called into question.
Well, if he knew it, excuse me, if he knew about it, that changes a lot of thoughts.
Well, Dave, he'll never admit that, I assume, right?
Yeah, if he did know about it, there's a huge problem. If he didn't know about it, his immediate action should have been, when those three players walked off the field, was to grab those helmets, stick them in the locker, and show them where the freaking dressing room is. They should have never hit the field the rest of the game.
So do you think the playoff committee takes Baker Mayfield's antics into consideration the next couple of weeks while they're deciding the 4?
I don't know why they didn't take into consider Manziel. Why would you take into consider Mayfield? I mean, again, this guy is just a supercharged guy. I mean, he fires up a team, a staff, a whole arena of fans. Whether you're for Oklahoma or not, he has a way of rallying you up. I mean, right now he's very magnetic. Again, I don't agree maybe with everything he did, and a lot of that, as he said and apologized for, whether, was made to or not, those antics, they don't have a place, and it was, spare the moment under the heat of battle, whatever, cliche you want to say, but I don't think it weighs in the decision here. I think he's hands down, Oklahoma hands down. They want them in the playoffs, and they want him as the Heisman winner.
Now, I think he's the clear-cut runaway favorite at this point for the Heisman. The other choices, Saquon Barkley, Bryce Love, Lamar Jackson. I mean, there's not even really a second runner, in my opinion, as far as, a runner-up for the Heisman. I think he's clear and away the favorite. I don't think it affects his Heisman candidacy, but can you see some of the voters leaving him off their ballots for a stunt like this?
No. He gets the bronze. Everyone else gets the take-home board game of the Heisman pick, from Milton Bradley. So it is what it is. I mean, you can't punish somebody for being enthusiastic. Now, if he'd went out there, dropped his pants, and mooned the whole stadium, and now maybe we got a problem. Maybe if he went on a drunken tear through town after every game, hanging out of a car, giving the middle finger to people, we got a problem. This is just still a little boy. You got to remember, this kid, he's a kid.
Right.
These are not adults. Exactly. Yeah, I didn't think he was. I didn't want to say that, but I'm glad you did. I didn't think he was 21 yet. I mean, he's a kid. So he's living the dream. And I think he gets actually more of a pass because he was not recruited. This is a walk-on. This kid walked on to the University of Oklahoma, not to the University of Mercer, the University of Oklahoma, starting quarterback, and now is going to run away with a Heisman Trophy. So this guy gets more of a pass than some kid that was heavily recruited by 8 or 9 or 10 major college programs and got to pick whichever one gave him the best vehicle to drive.
So let's move on from the Baker Mayfield saga and discuss the playoff committee and what they have seemed to accomplish, which they do every week, and that's stir up shit and controversy. And this week's no different. There's a couple of situations that happened. Miami moving up was a little bit of a head scratcher to me. We brought in an extra voice on this one to get a clearer view of the playoffs going on, and my buddy Nick's with us. He's going to talk about the playoff committee. And Nick, what are your thoughts on the four that came out? Obviously, Bama 1, Miami 2, Clemson 3, and Oklahoma 4.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't really see the reasoning in Miami jumping up, but I kind of think they do that just for the hype and the conversation. I think it's a lot to do with it. But I mean, obviously some of that's going to sort itself out, especially Miami and Clemson. So it's not a huge deal, but it is a head scratcher for sure.
But you got to admit, I mean, all they do is just they're the reason. I feel like the reason they're doing it is just to get us to do exactly what we're doing right now. I mean,
exactly.
They struggled against Virginia and moved up. I mean, I just don't see the value in what they did on Saturday to prove themselves. Granted, Clemson played the Citadel, and for all intents and purposes, it was a bye week for Clemson. But I think Clemson didn't do anything to hurt themselves. And granted, I don't believe they should be in, but I don't think if they're going to be in, I don't think they should have slid.
Right.
So, Dave, what are your thoughts on Miami moving up a spot despite the struggles they had against UVA?
Well, at this point, I don't think it's a big deal either, and I believe that in the Clemson deal, you're correct, washes itself out here in a couple of weeks. I think the big head scratcher still to a lot of people, especially up in the northern part of the country, is why Wisconsin's still sitting below number 4 at 11-0. And Oklahoma is still sitting above them, having lost to an unranked team.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma's definitely, if you had to take one of them out, it's got to be either Clemson or Oklahoma. I mean, Wisconsin's, all they've done is run the table through a Power 5 conference schedule. Granted, their non-conference hasn't been of the greatest, but I look at all 4 schedules of the people that are in the conference, the college football playoffs, and I don't see where their schedule is any worse when you tell me they didn't play anybody.
Yeah, and a lot of that, I think, they're stressing, how the teams are playing of late. Like, they don't want to use, just because they're undefeated. They want to use, how they're playing the last 3-4 games. They look pretty strong. I mean, granted, Wisconsin does too, but they're just looking overall at the eye test kind of. And but back to the point, I think they're just doing it because they know that's something that's going to stir the pot. It's going to sort itself out because you got to figure one of the Miami Clemson teams is going to drop out, and theoretically, Wisconsin is going to slide right in.
Saying, I think the whole pot stir here is that this is all we're playing games, we have records. We have 11-0s, 10-1s, we have 9-2s, but yet we're leaving this up to suggestive thinking from a committee. Like you just said, we think they're thinking of who's playing the strongest now. So it doesn't matter. I mean, we're all Division I. We all were classified as that, like any other football, from the pros on down. It's by won and lost. There's no committee that's subjectively saying, well, but your schedule, and you're 9-1, but your schedule. So I think there's the pot stir right there. Because at the end of the day, no matter where you end up on this list, you're not going to feel for some reason that you got a fair shake in the deal because someone's making a subjective decision based on their thoughts. Now, their thoughts could be they like you, they don't like you, they think this, they think that, they don't, whatever. So the records almost kind of get a little bit slightly tossed out of the window. And so what are we trying to do? We trying to make good TV? Are we really trying to put the best on the field? What are we trying to do here?
Oh, it definitely comes down to putting, the best on TV as far as the money and what's going to bring in the most money. That definitely has a factor in it. But it was kind of like we asked for this. Like when it was the BCS and it was all computers and stuff, there was all this, argument and, we need the playoff and this and that. So we kind of asked for this and now we have it. And now we're kind of like, let's go back to computers because the subjective thinking and stuff and having a committee is not doing it right for the most part. I mean, it's kind of, you got to have it one way or the other.
Yeah, and I know
we're probably going to get to this, but I'm going to throw it on the table right now. I mean, your poor UCF sitting out there. I mean, their schedule is no worse than anybody else's. They've beaten 2 ranked teams. I mean, they're going to run the table. Where do they stand in this? I mean, if I'm a Division I team and I've not lost a game, I should be in one of those top 4 spots.
I find it extremely difficult to use UCF as the example. Just their schedule alone. When you actually break down their schedule, it's not comparable to any of the Power Five. It's just not. I mean, look, yes, they beat Memphis. I mean, if you want to include, I mean, USF is coming up. I don't think that's going to be a walk in the park for them. I mean, when you break down like the rankings as far as the total offensive rankings, the teams they're playing, the defensive rankings are, it's absurd. I mean, the points against, they have one team that's ranked higher than 75th in points against in their defensive ranks, and that's FIU. I mean, look at this, like, there's nothing there. Memphis is their only quality win, in my opinion.
Then what are they playing for? If you're lumping them into a system that says, here's what we do at the end of the year. We have a playoff. If you're a school that's in that system, one of the, however many, whatever the number of schools are in Division 1A, and you're telling me they have no possible chance, okay, if there's no possible chance, then why do they play? What are they playing for?
I get what you're saying.
I guess my question is, do we need another division? Mid-major?
I think you need bigger conferences. It's the same Power Five, but you need to expand them. I mean, you need to add these teams. If they want a fair shot at the title, they need to join these conferences like that. Not kick teams out like Vanderbilt or Arkansas that people think are kind of weak for that conference. Maybe make super conferences. You know what I mean? Like,
so okay. So my question would be, so if UCF this year had been put into the Southeastern Conference and had this schedule that they have and won these games, you would tell me they would be qualified as a better team, thought of as a better team because they came out.
They can't have the same schedule being in the SEC, is what I'm saying. If they're playing in the SEC, say they swap schedules with Vanderbilt, they're not going to be what they are right now. They're not going to be putting up the points they're putting up because they're ranked number 1 in points scored. But that's kind of, you know, false. They're playing. It's not comparable. I mean,
and I understand what you're saying, but I'm always going to go back to the cliche. You don't know till they play the game.
Yeah. But I just like I told Aaron earlier, if you look at the 14 teams that are ranked higher in the college football playoff ranking, I don't see one that I think UCF is you should think is better. You know, never mind playing in the field. But if they play on the field, I don't see one that I think they beat. I mean, maybe Notre Dame, because I think Notre Dame's pretty subject. You know, I mean, I suspect in themselves. I don't agree with Notre Dame's ranking. I think they're kind of overhyped. I think Miami exposed them for real. I just don't see anybody else. I mean, at Penn State at 10, I think they'd handle them easily. USC would handle them, I believe. TCU. I mean, maybe Washington State would be a close one. I just don't. Mississippi State, I think, would handle them for sure. I don't see a team ranked higher than UCF that doesn't deserve to be there.
Well, then that goes back to the point that Dave makes is, okay, conferences like CUSA, AAC, Sun Belt, do they start to come together, Mountain West, et cetera, do they start to come together and say, look, let's create our own group of 5, our Power 5, which they can name it whatever they want, and then do they break off and form their own national championship committee?
At that point, I think that makes sense, and I don't think it's any different than what's kind of happening right now. Because you got a team like UCF that's running the table, and they're not going to really have a chance to get into anything. Like create their own division per se, you know, and then have them play it out. And that's if you want to play Division 1, have like true Division 1 is like the Power 5. Right. That's basically what it is. I mean, there's these other teams from these other conferences, they're not going to ever have a chance no matter what, because no one's ever going to look at their resume and compare it to a Power 5 conference resume and even think it's close.
Dave, to Nick's point, I mean, obviously UCF was hurt by the hurricane, not being able to play Georgia Tech. That might have helped, but does UCF have a responsibility on them when they have these kind of teams to step up to the Big 5 conferences, not the Marylands of the world, but more maybe in the Auburns of the world, and say, hey, look, I think we got a shot to come into your house or maybe put this on a neutral site? Do they have to do their own marketing, I guess, Dave?
Well, they have to, but you got to remember, this team is this year, the schedule that they wrote for this year were 5 years ago? I mean,
yes,
you can't pin them, you can't match them all together at the same time. So you either have to use this as a building block to run a string of continuous good years to be able to step up to those conferences, or you just have to take your one and done and go home and say, hey, it was fantastic, we got a good play on it, and we just go back to what we do.
Yeah, because it seems like these group of 5 schools, their Super Bowl or their national championship is a New Year's Six Bowl, Peach Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, et cetera, et cetera. I remember being there in 2013 when, you know, UCF won the Fiesta Bowl. It felt like we were, you know, BCS champions. It's got to be, there's got to be more something that's better than what the G5 schools get right now. And Nick, I'll ask you this question, and then Dave, I'll let you take it over. You know, the playoff committee is supposed to determine their seedings based on what happened on the field this year. And obviously, you know and I've talked and we've discussed that. I don't think that that's exactly what's happening. But Boise State, for a long time in the BCS, basically said, we'll come to your house, you come to our house, we'll play you anywhere, anytime, any day, and we'll beat you. But I don't think is that what the playoff committee needs to see out of UCF, like over the course of 3 or 4 years? And if so, is that necessarily fair to them?
Well, I mean, that kind of goes back to the point he just made as far as the scheduling is made so far in advance. I mean, rewind, 2-3 years ago? When was it UCF didn't win a game?
Right, 2 years ago.
I mean, so that's when these schedules are, so that's when these schedules are being made. So if UCF were to go to Alabama and with that kind of, mentality, they're going to be like, no thanks. I mean, it's kind of hard to do that, but I see what you're saying. It's just, I kind of think that the only way to fix it really is to get away from the whole, like, basically separate the conferences. Like, have the G5 be themselves and maybe even expand the conferences where they're, instead of the 16, go to more and just have that true Division I. And it's kind of hard when you're going as far as the records and its wins and losses and on the field and stuff, but not everybody's going to play each other. So you have to kind of do the subjective thinking of, would this team, based on who they played, how would they stack up against this team and rank them that way? And that's what's happening. And I kind of think they've got it right. Just in the fact that, like I said, I don't see anybody better than UCF or ranked higher than UCF that doesn't deserve to be there, even though the record might not be a perfect 10-0.
The other point it is too, just beside the scheduling, is that let's look at the coaching. I mean, if these guys have no coach to play for these major bowls or even to get in the playoff, they're going to have one good year and they're going to be touted like UCF coaches being touted to go back home to Nebraska, and they're going to get paid the big bucks to do it. Then we actually really at that point see how good they are or aren't. But for these schools to really become a power, you almost have to keep a staff in place over a period of time. And if you're really good, I mean, look at Boise State. They kept the same coaching staff there for how long? And improved over time that they were a contender of sorts. You're not going to get that everywhere because, money talks.
Well, what's better for a program like UCF, jumping into these quote unquote super conferences, or being where they are, being able to recruit the Florida pipeline of guys who aren't necessarily on the FSU, Miami, Florida, and Southeastern Conference's radar? What's better for recruiting for these guys? If we take the group of 5 and make them legitimate conferences that say, hey, they can step up with the big boys, or do we just make these super conferences and then UCF is turning into a let's take an SEC. Let's turn them into a Tennessee or a South Carolina kind of program where they have some flashes in the pan, but realistically they're not competing for an SEC championship. But if we make the G5, we make the AAC maybe a Power 6 conference, now I think that helps recruiting, and I think that helps guys like Scott Frost stay at UCF.
If you put UCF in one of these Power 5, like for example the SEC, they're not going to be able to compete recruiting-wise. You're not going to compete with FSU, with UF, with any of these teams in the area. You're not going to get those same caliber players. And like I said, they're not going to playing in the SEC or the ACC every single week. They're not going to have the same results, and you're going to fall back into where they're going to be like the Vanderbilt or the Tennessee or the Mississippi State. They're never going to have a legitimate shot. It's just not going to happen. I don't see them being able to take advantage of that Florida pipeline like you speak of.
Well, I agree with you on that. I think from a recruiting standpoint, I think staying where they're at right now is actually better recruiting for them, because we already know the first and second tier of talent, like in the state of Florida, is gone. They're gone to the power. So now you've got the third, fourth, and fifth tier. And those guys, those kids know by going to a UCF, they're going to play. They're going to play immediately. So that's going to give them possibly 4 good years to show and hone their talents to get them to the next level. And it gives them a chance to actually compete against those good players, the first and second level players that went off to the power schools, which, hey, they may make it, they may not. You don't know. But you go to a UCF and you're one of those third, fourth, fifth tier players, you got nothing to lose. You can just let it all out right there. And if it does work, you still make the program look good. The boosters are happy. The school's happy. Everybody's happy. You're maybe not getting, the golden nugget at the end, but hey, you have a respectable program year after year. And then down the road, maybe you do go to one of those power conferences when you are, completely satisfied that you can handle yourself and you're not in the basement every year and just playing and getting beat up and, what have you.
Well, Dave, let me ask you this, Dave. We've seen it obviously happen to Texas. Texas isn't getting the recruits out of Texas like they used to. They can't reload every year like they used to. Guys are going to Baylor, going up to Oklahoma, et cetera, et cetera. Why can't we see that happen in Florida, who, for all intents and purposes, has the best, if not the second, top 2 or 3 pipeline of high school recruits? Can we start to, I think we're starting to see it a little bit, but can we start to see that become a regular trend in Florida where Florida State, UF, and Miami are missing out on the top tier Florida recruits?
Well, I think you can, because you have UCF ranked number 13 right now. You have USF ranked 22nd. These schools are starting to prove themselves enough to where, they're not 1 through 5, but they're getting national exposure. So if I am that recruit and I do want to play from day one, and I know that my chances of maybe looking better against that schedule versus looking better against the schedule if I was playing for Miami makes me look better, well, hell yeah. Why would I not go there and stay in state?
What do you think, Nick?
I agree. I kind of think it's hard, even when they get talent. And it goes back to the coaching issue we're talking about. You don't have the long tenured coaches staying there that are, because they build this up, and it's happened like UCF. 4 or 5 years ago, they were in the Fiesta Bowl. Everything was great, and then all of a sudden they're right back down in the basement, and coaching change and all that stuff. It's just, I don't think they're going to keep getting that talent unless they have a little bit more, stable coaching situations and staff. And the only way that's going to happen, obviously, I think, is money. I think money is a big part of that. And you're not going to be able to keep people like Frost and stuff at UCF without throwing more money towards them. I'm not sure that's an option for teams like UCF.
Now,
so even money's not working. Aaron alluded to Texas. Look at Texas. It's been a train wreck ever since Mac left. They're just running through coaches and systems and changes. And it doesn't matter what kind of money they're throwing at it right now. It's a train wreck at Texas.
I agree. A lot of the Texas situation, I think, was with Charlie Strong, that was a complete different, they went the wrong way, I think, on the coaching philosophy and coaching style. It didn't work, and they wasted so much time on that. And then when you bring in now, it's a whole different scheme again. Right. And anytime you bring in a new coaching style, it's going to take time to recruit the players you need for your system, to build up what you need. And it's kind of been one of the things where it's happened so long now, they've fallen into that kind of lower tier over in the Big 12. And they're not getting those recruits now because the Baylors have passed them, Oklahoma's passed them. That has a lot to do with it as far as the types of coaching that are changing.
Well, now put yourself in the shoes of a 4-star athlete here. Dave, I'll go to you, and then Nick, you can take over. Put yourself in the shoes of a 4-star athlete. I'm looking at 2 teams coming into my house, Jimbo Fisher and Scott Frost, Florida State and UCF. Jimbo comes in and says, look, we're going to try to get you the availability to play, but, I think by the time we're going to redshirt you, by the time you're a sophomore, you're going to be, that's when you'll probably start cracking the starting lineup. Or Scott Frost comes in and says, I'm ready for you to sling the rock day one. What matters more, getting exposure and getting into the National Football League, or potentially competing for a national championship? I think that what do you look at as a 4-star athlete in today's day and age, when all it really matters to me is potentially about a paycheck?
Well, I'm gonna throw out this crazy thing first and say, hopefully the parents are sitting there, and the most important thing here is the education. But we know where that sort of ranks here. If I'm sitting at that table, we are in a culture of instant gratification. We need everything immediately, and these kids are growing up with that. Let's look. The phones, the system, everything is instant. Everything is got to happen now. If I'm that recruit and I'm getting told that there's any possibility that I'm not playing or sitting out a year, I'm not going. I'm not listening to you at that point. But if you're telling me on opening day, I'm the one running through the banner first onto the field, and I'm the one whose picture is on the program, and I'm the one starting, I'm absolutely there, because I need you need to immediately know about me. I cannot drop off from high school at all. I need to stay in the news. I need to stay out. My name needs to be there. I'm going to go with the guy that's going to put me on the field. because that's what I do. And that's my resume, is what I do on the field. So sitting on the bench with a red shirt on, it's not helping me. That's hurting me.
Well, then, Nick, how does a guy like Nick Saban continue to do that with guys who are 4- and 5-star prospects who don't always start from the opening snap? How does a guy like Saban continue to do that?
That does actually bring us to that same point up. He's kind of mastered that as far as the types of recruits that he recruits in there, and he brings in not just the talent, but he's bringing guys who are buying into the system, they're buying into the process as far as they know coming in that they're not going to just walk on the field and they're not going to be starting, game one, that they're going to probably redshirt and then maybe even take another 2, years before they actually become a starter. If you look at a lot, especially on defense, a lot of these guys at Alabama, they're not really full-time starters until their junior year or senior year.
Right.
And by that time they developed enough and that's why the draft picks are, keep on coming. And that's part of their recruiting pitch is that, you're not going to start freshman. You're not going to be a stud freshman. They have, the rare things like Jalen Hurts, right out the gate was a freshman stud.
Right.
But overall, he's got guys that are basically, they know coming there, this is what it is. You're coming here with other guys just as good as you that are fighting for that same position. And you're not guaranteed to be there. And it might take you 3 years before you hit the field as a star. But if you buy into that process and you do it correctly, more than likely you're going to end up at the next level, which, like you said, that's where they want to be. They want to be getting the big paycheck to the next level. And as long as they, buy into that, that's what they're doing.
So it's about.
I think you all laughed at what I said at the beginning there about the education, but from what I've read and what I know and what I've seen and heard, I believe Nick Saban sells all those things that you're saying, but I think he also relates and sells to the parents of those kids that not only am I going to let your kid play and this is where we're going, but I'm going to teach your son how to be a man. I'm going to make him get an education. I'm going to make him grow up to be respectful and be productive along with the process of playing football. And I think that's a big selling point. And I know probably all coaches go through this, but just what I say, I see and I read, I think Saban's probably the best at it.
I agree. And it's not just Saban. I mean, it's Saban, Meyer, they're all the top tier, top coaches, even though the big programs, they have the same thing in common. They're excellent recruiters. And they're getting the talent because like you said, they're recruiting their parents, not just the kids, but they're recruiting the parents as well. And they're selling the education and all that stuff too. But they're really good at the recruiting part, and that's where they're getting the talent. And it's been proven year after year.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's why the legends stick and stay for a long time. And a guy like Saban, when he's got that kind of control, obviously we see it didn't work in the NFL, but when he knows what he's doing and he's got the control like that, it's unparalleled to anybody that else can try to walk into your house and compete. So I guess the playoff committee, for all intents and purposes, is doing his job because it's getting guys like us to get all riled up on different sides of the fence. So Nick, I appreciate you coming aboard and taking some time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. So yeah, very interesting conversation we had there with Nick. Obviously, he made no secret to his Bama ties, but he brought up some key interesting points, and I think he said what a lot of those Power 5 conference backers are feeling. Teams like UCF, they don't play the toughest of schedules, and I know that a lot of people think that their conference is supreme, and he's not wrong. I mean, the SEC has 5 good schools in it this year, and those schools, for the most part, play each other, and we've seen the kind of test that it takes. On the flip side, a G5 supporter can say something along the lines of, "Yeah, but you scheduled Mercer," and I've always given Saban a testament and a credit to scheduling a team like that to create almost like a second bye week. But, the battle rages on. The playoff committee almost seems like this is what they were put in place for, is to create the controversy. My situation is in the end of the year, if Wisconsin is still undefeated and not the number 2 seed or number 1 seed, depending on how the rest of the season shakes out, I think that is where I have the problem, because I think an undefeated Big Ten team in a Power 5 conference should be afforded a home game in the playoff.
Well, here's what's going to happen after this weekend, and I think you're going to talk about the games this weekend, but Bama loses this weekend. I'm pretty sure they're going to lose, and when they lose, well, that's going to throw this whole thing upside down. Now, if and when Wisconsin, they'll beat Minnesota this weekend, and then they'll beat Ohio State, then what do you do with them? now you snubbed them for how many weeks? Now you're probably looking at the team that should probably be ranked number 1. it would be very close. If Miami runs the table and you have those two schools undefeated, how do you do 1 and 2 there?
I think they're going to put Miami number 1 because they've kept them in the playoff. I liken it back to the same situation with Florida State the first year of the playoffs when they had Jameis Winston. They were undefeated going into the playoff. Granted, it wasn't flashy. They had a couple of comeback wins, but they were undefeated and they were number 4. I mean, so I guess, what the playoff committee does with the teams, it almost seems like they take the records out of it, and we talked about that. I can't see an undefeated Wisconsin team winning the Big Ten, beating Ohio State, who the playoff committee just loves so much. I can't see them. I think it's unfair to them to be a 3 or 4 seed, and I understand the playoff games are on neutral sites, but I think for them to be a 4 seed undefeated and have to go face potentially Alabama is not appropriate.
And you say Alabama, but let's look at that picture. If Alabama loses this week,
okay,
where do you put them? Because now you have an Auburn team that has knocked off 2 number 1 teams in the country, even though they have 2 losses. Where do you put Auburn? You can't really put Alabama above them. I mean, you can, but you can't. You can because they've only lost 1 game versus 2 losses, but you're looking at a 2-loss team that has knocked off 2 number 1s. Now, if you're telling me strength of schedule, well, shit, they just blew the doors off. I don't care how many games they lost. They knocked off the 2 number 1 teams in the country at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think if Alabama loses to Auburn, I think that hurts Clemson. I think you got to kick Clemson out of the top 4.
Well, Clemson's out if Miami wins anyway.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying next week, if after the Iron Bowl, Alabama loses to Auburn during the next week's playoff, that what they put out on Tuesday, I think Clemson's got to go out. I think you got to put Auburn. I think Alabama's number 4, Auburn's number 3, with Wisconsin and Miami. I think Clemson has to take a fall at some point because I understand that it'll shake itself out in the ACC championship, but I'm saying next week they lost to Syracuse. Syracuse is 4-7. If you want to talk about,
Clemson's only getting respect because of last year. They should not be in the top 4 now.
They should not be getting respect because last year because they were supposed to be isolated.
No, they should not be. Again, it gets back to my question: are we going by records, or is this just a committee with their subjective trying to manipulate what makes this television? I don't know. I mean, that's what it kind of looks like. But you do not have this problem with any other level. And that was to Mike Leach's point that you're going to play. He's exactly right. This is the only system that you have this kind of mess. And I think too, and when we were touching on the number of teams in Division I, you may have to break that up. I think it's too many teams to form a playoff from.
Well, let's play.
I think you got to give.
Let's play Mike Leach's. Let's play Mike Leach's clip here, and we'll discuss that because I think you and I, while after the first initial laughing of it, I think he makes some good points. So we're gonna play the clip. We're gonna play the clip right here.
We're American. We love committees. Let's get us a committee. Well, who should be on the committee? Well, I don't know. This guy's a good guy. Let's have him on the committee. Well, I mean, there's people on the committee that don't even have remote associations with football, nor have they at any level other than being a fan. But you know what? Let's have them on a committee. Why not? And then, I mean, it'd be fun. We'd go to that resort. We could talk. We could hang out at dinner. And then we'll decide which 4 teams should go. We ought to have an extended playoff system, just like everybody else does. I mean, this isn't reinventing the wheel. This is instead of clumping down the road on our square wheel, considering the notion of rounding some of the edges off so it'll spin. Okay. And then, let's see, we could copy the NFL. We could copy Division II. We could copy 1AA or whatever that division's called now that they changed all the initials because they want to confuse everybody. And then they want to just all of a sudden say, you were wrong because it's called ABC something or other. And now you got more to remember just because we had a committee and we don't have anything better to do than have a committee and change all the initials.
So, yeah, I mean, after hearing that, my initial thought was, somebody just gave him a beer and let him just kind of go drunk uncle on it. But he brings up some decent points. D-Ray, I'll kick it to you behind the glass. You're looking a little bored there. If we opened up the playoffs to 8, 16, 32 teams seems a bit crazy. But if we opened up the playoffs to that many teams, a la like the NCAA basketball style, what are your thoughts on something like that?
I think it gives teams that are working really hard a fighting chance.
Right. But if the 32nd ranked team in the nation won the national title, does that devalue the national title? Or are we just trying to create Cinderella stories?
I think it's the Cinderella story idea.
You like the Cinderella story idea?
Yeah.
Is it more of a situation where we don't actually get the best champion, we just get the hottest team like we do in the NFL?
Exactly.
So you're okay with that?
Yeah, it's also the same for college basketball.
So Dave, what are your thoughts? I mean, are you more of the Cinderella story kind of guy, or are you think 30? What's an appropriate amount for you in your opinion?
Well, I don't know if I have an appropriate amount set yet, but just thinking out loud about it. First of all, America loves an underdog. So, 32 teams, I think, more than sufficiently allows you, because I mean, let's say the last game is this week minus the division championships for college, and we don't play the national championship till the first week of February. So we basically got 2 months here.
It's in January, not February, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, okay.
There's about a month in between from conference championships to the first playoff game.
Okay, first playoff. All right. 32 teams, you could more than sufficiently work that out in that frame of time and tie the corporate sponsorship to each playoff game. Now, they're not going to like that because it's a moving target every year. But, I think what it does is it just eases people's minds, I think. If you put more teams in the playoff and you had that chance for the Cinderella story to win. Because like I said before, you can tell me on paper that this team's better than this team, and I can look at it and I can agree with you. But until you play the game, ask Georgia, you don't know, I mean, let's face it. You just don't know how it's going to play out. And that's what the exciting part of more than a 14 playoff would bring. That's why Division II, Division III, high school, the NFL, that's why we play more than, 2 games. I mean, it's a playoff system. It proves your stamina. It proves your guts. It proves how bad you want it. And if you are the hot team and you can stay the hot team, then it proves you're worthy. You're the Cinderella story, and it makes for great television coverage, press, and sets up the next year to can it continue or who will be this year's. I mean, come on. You're in Vegas. They love underdogs. That's how they make money.
I think making it a 32 team actually almost shakes up the whole entire landscape of college football. Obviously, you do away with the top 25. I think now you've got to be, you have to take it to top 40 now at this point to have the ranking system. Do we do it based on computer polls?
I think the top 25 nonsense needs to go away if you're doing a 32 team playoff. I mean, come on, any other system, and I'll just use the NFL. There's not a top 20, there's not a top 15 in that top 12 team list there. Here's the standing. Here's where they stand. Well, what's wrong with that? Why are we still stuck in this ranking college teams? Why can't we just look at the standings and say, look, they're 10-0. Oh, look, they're 0-11.
Well, then
and we build the playoff system from that.
You'd have to drop the conference system altogether.
Maybe, but that gets back to the point. Do we have too many teams in Division I and too much imbalance from one end of the spectrum to the other, where we need to take the power conferences, add a little bit to them. They create their own system, and then we go down to maybe a Division I subtitle A or B or whatever you want to call it, and then they have their own playoff system.
Okay.
Because in our previous discussion, we discussed it. The lower end schools are never going to have a chance to play for a national championship. But in a 32 team, UCF has a chance in that.
Okay, so let's take it. Say let's cut the Division I FBS schools in half. So we go from I think there's 120. So let's go to 60. We have our Power 5 conferences. We keep our conferences, and every conference has 12 teams. What do you think in that scenario? I mean, do we have to do a complete re-landscaping of the thing? I mean,
I think that totally works. Because now you're basing it on schedule.
Well, now what I'm saying is okay. So my theory is we give the 120 teams a 5-year window at this point, and say, look, you need to recruit, you need to win, you need to schedule properly, and you need to catch the attention of Power 5. And for the teams that are in the Power 5 that are siphoning off of the football resources like Vanderbilt. Kentucky, obviously, their basketball program is their moneymaker, but they still have a football program that sits there and takes the SEC shared revenue. Oregon State, I mean, the list could go on of teams. Rutgers, obviously, has been a failed experiment in the Big Ten. I think you set that lineup up and say, look, you've got 5 years to do your best. And I don't know how they would grade it, or judge it, but those Power 5 conferences could then say, these are the 12 teams we want to extend bids to. And basically let the schools iron themselves out. You can still keep the conferences regional, but you don't have to if you don't need to. If the conference if the Pac-12 wants you, and you're a Boise State, and the Big 12 wants you, and you got to travel all your games in the Midwest. If you can make it work, I mean, I think that's a good shakeup.
Well, I think the one big problem with college football post all these other ones that I'm comparing it to is that the conferences originally were regional. Now we've sort of stretched the bounds of those a little bit now in order to build these big conferences and stuff. But when it gets down to what you're saying, and we're trying to take the best schools from here and there and put them into a conference, I think what we run up against is that we're stretching the budgetary requirements of these universities way too thin in order to get them to these locations and to get this scheduling done. I mean, college football and the college conferences have always been a regional type setup. I mean, let's look at the Big 12 now. They're stretched from freaking Texas to West Virginia. You know, I mean, it's just why? Why is West Virginia in the Big 12? You know, it's stupid, but they are. So now the Texas schools have to budget the extra money to get their teams there, to spend the extra nights or whatever they got to do there, to charter the extra planes and stuff. So this becomes a financial burden on the universities more so. Now, at the end of the day, the programs, the university sporting programs bring in a lot of money for these universities. At the end of the day, the university presidents, education is their number one concern and stuff. So when money gets thin, they're not going to cut it from educational budgets and stuff just to satisfy a playoff system that we've designed and put teams into our division that are halfway across the country further than we're normally going. So I think logistics plays a huge role in why we can't probably make this as simple as we want to make it. So,
right, but
what are the answers?
Say my plan somehow was, my fairy tale somehow went into scenario, and UCF's only bid was from the Pac-12. I don't think they sit there and go, well, we don't have the resources to play a Pac-12 schedule. I think they go.
No, they go, but in that essence, as they go, they're, let's face it, it's picking up the extra money of that. It's the boosters and the supporters. So you better have a damn good program. You can't go to the Fiesta Bowl one year and not win a game the next year and expect these supporters and stuff to keep shelling out the same amount of money to keep that program moving forward.
Well, don't you think revenue sharing from the extra playoff games should help?
It depends. It depends on how many more teams you put into these power conferences to get them, if you're going to keep them at the same number and you're just talking about eliminating and beefing up, okay, that's probably one thing. If you're talking about actually adding a few more here and there, I don't know. And I don't know that much about the revenue sharing. And let's face it too, in this revenue sharing world, we're seeing a declining attendance across the board at sporting events because of everything's at your fingertips. Why do I need to go? I can just sit here and watch it in the palm of my hand. I don't need to go sit outside and watch this and stuff. The major TV stations are totally losing out on this deal. So over time, where does the revenue come from? I mean, the internet's free.
Maybe
the internet's free. I can stand up at the top of the stadium with a freaking camera and stream the whole game for nothing on YouTube. So revenue sharing, it faces its own problem, I think, as we go forward. So again, when revenue isn't coming in the front door from those generated possibilities, guess who makes it up on the back door? And it's the boosters, the supporters, the alumni. And there's going to be a point where, they break. So,
right.
I don't know.
That's an interesting take. We'll have to put that on the back burner for another day with the revenue sharing. But you're right. I mean, teams that aren't really competing or aren't really, like Syracuse's and Kentucky's and Vanderbilt's who, may have a splash in the pan here and there, but generally they're a 3-9 every year program. They're eventually going to have to rely on the boosters for more money, and that may not be the case. It may not be available.
You really want to solidify an answer to that? Go ask the boosters at the University of Texas. They've shoved millions into that program since Mac's been gone, and they've got nothing to show for it except heartache. And I'll guarantee you that there's probably a few people pulling their hands back and not giving because it's just not working. And when you have a school like that starts to lose their major supporters, you've got a problem.
Well, D-Ray, you're a sports nut. What is your preferred method of viewing a college football game? Would you rather sit at home and watch it where there's nobody in your way, you got the best seat in the house, or do you like the atmosphere of a tailgate and getting out there and being a part of feel like you're being a part of the school, even if necessarily you're not an alumni, but you're a fan of the school? Like out here, we've gone to UNLV games before. We've done the tailgate. I mean, what's your preferred method of watching your team?
I like being in the action, being out there with everybody else.
You do? Okay. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's another viewpoint on it. I mean, there's still people that'll go to the games, but at the rising cost of ticket prices. And, you look at StubHub, and when we looked at Fiesta Bowl tickets and Rose Bowl tickets for when Florida State was in, I mean, it was just outrageous. You're talking about mortgage payments. I mean, people are still going to pay that people are still going to pay that price, but that number's getting fewer and fewer.
And I think the saddest part about the declining, and what I've read about the declining attendance of major sporting events is the highest percentage of declining attendance is within the student body itself.
Which is weird because that's free.
Yeah, and there's no support from the kids at the university. So,
well, all these universities make it a point to have so many activities on campus. I know UCF has this problem, and a couple other schools definitely do as well. I mean, if you don't put out a good product, your fans aren't going to show up, and that includes your students. But if you do put out a good product, but you're also putting out 4 or 5 other things to do, it's the Miami sports problem. Why do I want to go to a game? Why do I want to go to a Marlins game when it's 100 degrees outside when I can just go lay out on the beach or go, do whatever? It's almost, and especially in a town like Orlando, you got everything else to do in the world, and that's just something you're going to have to fight around.
And to that point, I can lay out on that beach with this little 7-inch piece of technology in my hand and watch the game.
Sure, absolutely. I think
before it was probably a battle. Do I want to go or not? Am I going to miss it? Am I going to have to wait and hear it on the news? I know you don't have to do that. So now the decision's easy. I'm going to the beach.
I mean, I think the first step in that situation, I think the prices have to scale back a little bit. I think the companies, the NCAA, the schools can still make a good, revenue stream, but you can't expect a guy to continue to take his family to a game and shell out, what's equivalent to an entire month's mortgage every week. It's just not possible. And that's just for tickets. He's still got to pay concessions, and his kids want, Bam, Wim Whams, Flim Flams, Woo, Bamboozles, whatever.
Pretzels.
Well, let's just look at the scenario real quick here where I'm at. You know where I'm at. You said the East Coast. I'm in West Virginia. I attend Marshall University football games. It's a 41,000 seat stadium. Over the last 5, and I researched this because I had an argument with the athletic director over their ticket pricing schedule a couple years ago. Actually, over the last 10 years, they've averaged just under 23,000 a game in a 41,000 seat stadium. Since the inception of that stadium in 1986, they've sold it out twice. But they want to charge me $40 a ticket to sit and watch a subpar university football team play. And if I didn't buy that ticket and went out on the street 5 minutes before the game, I could buy that same seat for $5. And they want to know why I'm not buying season tickets. That's why, because you're not offering me a product equivalent to the amount I'm paying for it, so I'm not going to pay it. It's that simple, and the price is only going to go up because of what we've been talking about. Revenue sharing gets less, support gets less. So where do you find that money to put the new turf down? You jack the ticket prices up. I mean, the fans are always going to be the ones that pay. It's trickle down. It always is. It is in everything. So now we're starting to see no attendance. Well, if the fans stop going, now what do? Do you just dissolve the program? What you do is you stop trying to think. You try to create an environment of excitement and stuff. You would be better off selling every ticket in there for $5. Then you probably have a chance through marketing of actually filling the stadium at $5 a pop. And if everyone knew every week it was $5 a pop. I mean, and here's the thing. The tickets are $40, but guess what? If a big 10-school team comes in, like this year was Purdue. Now, Purdue's nothing, but it's a Big 10 school. Guess how much those tickets were?
Double.
On the 55. Discriminatory pricing. You know, I go to a Cincinnati Reds game all the time. I pay X amount of dollars for this seat, but that's just for teams in their division. If the New York Yankees come to town or the Cleveland Indians come to town, that price almost goes up 75%.
Right.
Now, I don't know what causes that.
Popularity.
I mean, you know, but it's what it is. But to your point, you're right. A family of four cannot and will not, over time, pay that kind of money for their entertainment when they can go spend 25% of that money doing something else and still watch the game in their hand while they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, even a sports bar, you buy a family of four, wings and beer and a couple of kids meals. You probably get out of there for $60, where one of your tickets is $60 just to sit.
And when the kids get bored 5 minutes into it, they can go play, the video games and stuff while I still sit there and eat and drink and watch probably multiple games on TV if the team that I'm rooting for is getting shellacked or winning big and it becomes boring. So the entertainment in this country, because of technology and the deliverance of it, has changed tremendously. And I think a lot of colleges and people in that situation are playing catch up on how to actually, going forward, try to make it. Well, there'll be a time where, these stadiums are going to shrink. The next, like you said, take away some seats. I can see it coming. I don't see a lot of money being spent on new arenas now. What I'm seeing money being spent on are a lot of what they call sports complexes, which allows all the sporting venues in the university to take advantage of it, and actually the students and stuff themselves. So it becomes more of a well-rounded way to spend your money and get results and stuff. But the stadiums are going to shrink. If you can't fill them, you look bad on television. If you're at the top schools, I don't know. I don't know where we're going with all this. It'll be interesting over time.
Yeah, that's most definitely a situation we'll have to keep an eye on the next few years as technology advances and the cost of tickets will almost assuredly increase. Let's move south of the border a little bit and discuss some, I guess you would call them hot takes, because we're about to get a little politically incorrect here. And Your boy, Marshawn Lynch. What's going on with that guy?
Look, you and I talked about this, putting this on the show and discussing it. And, you know me, people out there don't, but, I was chomping at the bit. I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun, Look, I boiled this down. I've given this a lot of thought. Okay. I mean, let's just look at the numbers here for him. All right. One of the highest fined players in the NFL. Everything from groping himself to giving middle fingers to not attending, just pretty much just being a thug. Off the field, DUI. Now, I will say that he tries to do good through his foundations and stuff. But still, there's just this level of rebellion in him that continually puts him in hot water. Let's just look at the family life raised by the mother. The father's still doing time in prison. It's almost your classic example of why he acts the way he does. I don't know. I don't understand him. I mean, cause honestly, what he did is no more, well, the DUI is a big deal, but a lot of that stuff's just petty shit. Now, this whole freaking national anthem garbage, look, do what you want. I elect not to watch them. I elect not to buy their stuff. I elect not to follow. I don't care. But there's not enough people like me to make it, and then you've got the NFL pondering. I think that was the title today. The pondering how to approach the kneeling down. So, you know what that is. What are we going to do that doesn't make the players union mad at us?
They're putting this out for the guys like you who don't watch it and think, oh, the NFL is finally going to get off their ass and do something so I can come back and watch it again. Nothing's going to change. The thing that I don't understand is you let situations like this happen where Marshawn, he doesn't even know what he's protesting at this point. I mean, standing up for a national anthem that actually has one of the more oppressive police forces in the world. But they just didn't happen to kill one of your friends. Like, that's bullshit. Like, the Mexican police are one of the most oppressive forces in the world, but you don't know what you're fighting. You just know you think I can make a problem for people. And then everybody's sitting here coming out, why is Donald Trump associating himself with problems in the NFL? Because you've made him do that at this point. You've knocked on his door and asked him to come just so you could say, why are you up in my business? Well, you've put this at my forefront.
I mean, here's the bottom line, what has happened in this country. We've done a complete 180 from the time of the first boat coming across to now. Historically, if we're looking at the race relations in this country, the whites have been the driver. They've been the ones that have called the shots. They've been the ones that have set the tone. They're the ones that have made the rules, and they're the ones that have been the ass side of the equation. Here, over the last, let's say, I would say good 12 to 15 years, it's the other way around. Same problem, except the blacks are driving it now. So now we have the other side of the equation driving the race relation. Same problem, as always, except they're the ones driving the process and the problems. And we're the ones being mistreated and stuff. And we're taking a stance and stuff. And they're not mistreated. And explain to me how in the United States you're mistreated. I won't sit here and pick out certain circumstances that happen here and there. And when you really look at those, a lot of those are idiots. There's always going to be idiots in a society, especially a democracy society. But when you have laws that say that you're equal, you're equal. And I think for the very majority of the time, you had the same opportunity I had to do anything you want to do in this country. You've elected to use your history as a crutch to try to get more, or just to try to brand yourself and get your name out, or whatever reason you're using it for, which will lead us into our next conversation, I'm sure. But
yeah,
but we've done a complete 180 flip in this society, and this is their way, one of their ways of driving home and calling the shot. Well, go ahead. I don't really care. I mean, I'll tell you I care, but at the end of the day, that's not taking away food off my table. It's not taking a roof off my head. It's not taking money out of my pocket. I don't give a shit.
But don't you think the message has gotten so skewed? I mean, when Kaepernick was doing it, he was doing it before the media caught on, which, makes it seem a little more noble because he wasn't doing it for the media attention until the media decided to stranglehold it for the 24-hour news cycle. So Cap comes out with his message when probed with the media. He's saying, look, there's serious police brutality, and whatever side you sit on that, that's not what we're here to argue about. I feel like since that situation, not only has Kaepernick, but all of his constituents so skewed that message by their specific actions, the pig socks, the Castro t-shirt, the standing for a Mexican national anthem, in a country where their police force is so much more oppressive to their citizens than we are. The only difference is the majority of people in Mexico are Mexican. So there's not a huge melting pot where they're saying, well, this demographic is targeted. Everybody in Mexico, for the most part, is Mexican. So you can't really say that there's a demographic that's singled out. Everything that they've done to try to, the Michael Bennett situation here in Vegas, when video evidence clearly showed that he was not necessarily lying, but not telling the entire truth. Everything that they've done to purvey this message or to continue this message, including sitting down, kneeling, raising a fist, etc., has just gone completely wrong for them, and it doesn't matter because their supporters don't care. They just see the message that happened, and they don't care about the way that it's getting across. And I think that's a very factually inaccurate way to go. If you're going to have a stance in a movement, bring it with figures and facts, and bring it with a sense of class or a sense of dignity, or know what you're doing. Don't sit there and be a hypocrite to the fact that, like, you're wearing Castro t-shirts, who was one of the biggest oppressive dictators of our generation, minus maybe Adolf Hitler, and you're doing the same thing in Mexico when they have such an opposite viewpoint of systematic oppression than we do. To me, it's when you're when you're protesting the wrong way, your message is irrelevant at that point.
Well, it's what I consider a shallow movement. It's a spur of the moment. This is what I'm going to do. It wasn't thought out. It wasn't planned anything close to what you're saying, to make a movement successful or to impact. It's a shallow movement. So when it really didn't work or there was pushback, there was no plan B. So now it's shoot from the hip. And you got a lot of copycatters and stuff. And here's the main reason I really don't give a shit about these guys, because I know at the end of the day, or let's basically say at the end of their careers, within 2 years, 80% of every one of the players in the NFL will be bankrupt. And they're going to be right back where they started as kids. I really don't care. Do what you want to do, because I know what the end result's going to be here. You live your life like you show your ass, and it's all bad. And at the end of the day, you're going to die stupid and broke. And I don't care. So go ahead. If that makes you happy for the moment, great. Knock yourself out. I'll turn the channel. I'll watch hockey. I'll watch something that's more respectful than that. But it's not a planned out movement. It's not even a movement. It's an afterthought is what it is. So, I really honestly deep down could care less what they do. Now, you start stepping on the flag and shit, now we got a problem.
Well, that's the issue I have with it is, you're right. I care less at the end of the day because centrally it does not affect me. However, I have a problem when the NFL allows these gestures and these symbols and these protests to happen on the field during what's supposed to be their job. When they're clocked into work. And if they want to allow that to happen, fine. I can turn off the national anthem. I can cut to the game midway through the first. My issue is they allow things like that to happen, but God forbid the Dallas Cowboys put a memorial of the slain officers on their helmet, or God forbid one of the football players has 9/11 tribute cleats and gets fined for it. I mean, you can't have this opaque line where this is okay, but this is not. I can't have a tribute to guys who were murdered and killed for really no apparent reason other than terrorism, both in the Dallas slain officers and in 9/11, and the list goes on in situations where it's been head scratchers by the NFL's decisions. But God forbid they want to protest something that statistically just isn't factual. We're allowing that to happen because, oh no,
And it gets back to my point of who's driving the poor race relations in this country to a point where people feel that they need to walk on eggshells, and oh no, we can't do that. But something that's finite and tangible, like what you're talking about, like a sticker or something on a clear side. Oh no, you can't put that on there. That's easy to say no to.
Yeah.
It's not easy to say no to this because they're portraying it as deep feelings when all it is bullshit. That we're taking it as, oh, we can't step on their culture. Well, you know what? Guess what? Here's my take on all that. For the first one of you, I want to pack your bags and fly right back. I'll buy the ticket. I really don't care. But until then, you need to abide by the laws. You need to show some respect in this country. I'm not saying you can't show your emotions and show your little personal protest. But at the end of the day, who are you going to call when somebody's breaking into your house? Who are you going to call when someone invades our country and starts killing our people? Huh? Now what are you going to do? You better watch out because you're biting the hand that feeds you.
Yeah, that's always been my big thing is if you got a problem with police, please don't call them when you have a situation.
Yeah. And here's the sad thing. They know they'll come. Well, they'll come because, you're right, well, because they have to, but they are abiding by the law. And they're abiding by their ethics and their oath they took when they took the position to protect those laws without prejudice. So they will come. So it's just, I think it's one of these things, the less press there is, it goes away quicker, but you know how that's going to happen. On any given slow day, it's news. Somebody kneeled down. Oh my gosh. Well, go to church on Sunday. There's a whole room full of people kneeling down. What's your point?
We got to, same with LeVar Ball. I mean, he has to consistently keep himself in the news. And, I talked about it earlier. I still think this was some kind of weird setup, but, his son goes over to a communist country, commits a crime. The president bails him out. And he just sits there and disrespects him on, live national television. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, the people that should have apologized. The 3 kids apologized. They apologized. And even the coach offered to apologize. I don't really give a shit what your dad does because I'm going to tell you right now, if you 3 had not been bailed out and you were going to sit over there for any amount of time in jail, he would have just freaking walked away anyway. He would have gone on about his life like nothing was going on. So, this guy is a piece of work. He's just obnoxious. And this is part of his marketing scheme to do this stupid shit. Now, my only concern, it's not a concern, I just don't know why Trump's still playing into this. He played into it again today, with a comment about him being, equivalent to Don King. I have no idea what the relevancy to that comment is. I still can't figure it out other than the loud mouth part of it. Yeah. But, look, it concerns me too that in the act of trying to market yourself through this nonsense that you do drag your family in on it. I mean, to tell me on one hand that, my kids are 4.0, very smart students, blah, blah, well then you know what? They should have known where they were going. And as they were doing what they were doing, number one, they should have known it was wrong. Number two, they should have known the consequences if they got caught. And I think they do know that they apologize. Now the dad, look, this guy, it doesn't matter what you say to this guy because he's always right. He does everything for himself. He's not going to tell you that Skechers is the one that bailed out his company to still make it at least somewhat relevant, but it's going down quickly. Have you seen those shoes? Those are the most stupidest looking things. $1,000 a pair if his son signs them. This guy is nothing but a money grubbing piece of shit. That's all he is. I'm going to tell you what, I would love to be a fly on the wall if he was around when Abe Lincoln was around on the day that he was free. Who? Abe who? Oh, he didn't do me no personal favor. Okay. All right. Let's just put those back on your leg there, son. Come on. This guy's a freaking fruitcake. He's an idiot. He's a freaking idiot. To play into him is more press than he actually deserves. You know? I mean, he was a subpar athlete.
That's the problem, though, is why are we playing?
I don't know. Sometimes I honestly think, and I thought about this today too, why would Trump be doing this? And the only thing I can think is one businessman to another who's playing in this to help this guy get recognition for his company. It's the only thing I can think of. He's playing the businessman side of this good cop, bad cop. So because what's going to happen? Same thing I did. I had no idea who this fool was. I had no idea what the BBB was, so I looked it all up to see what it is. Am I going to buy or anything? Hell no. But you know what? There's a lot of people of his that will spend that kind of stupid money and take food out of their mouth to put an $1,100 pair of tennis shoes on because his kid signed it. God bless him, and I'm glad he can sleep at night for taking that money out of their pocket because they feel they have to have that to be trendy. But other than that, I don't know why Trump's playing into this.
Well, I think
you're the president.
If you're talking about this good cop, bad cop thing, if Trump is somehow involved in it, which would be a hell of a tinfoil conspiracy, you almost think that he would do that in the sense of, a lot of people who detract from Trump would buy these shoes just because Trump has publicly feuded with LeVar Ball. So people would go out and buy the $1,000 BBB shoes just to have something that sticks it to Trump, even if that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's everybody gets their 15 minutes, and I know this guy's had way more than his 15 minutes. But his big thing is, I treat everybody equal. Well, I wouldn't be proud that you treat everybody like shit. Because
treating everybody equal is not as cool when you treat everybody like dog shit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come back and bite you on the ass someday. Don't know when. Hopefully I'm still around and I can laugh when it happens. But until then, I mean, hey, we have to realize in this country when people like this surface, we got to just ignore them. And it's hard to. And it's hard now because every time we turn on our phones, it's a lead, well, I call them stories. It's a lead article, not even a story. And it's definitely not even newsworthy. But it's there. And they know that. So on one side, I guess you could say he is a marketing genius because he, over the last week, has kept his name and brand on one of the top 5 articles daily on any of the servers. So he's achieving his goal. So from that standpoint, I mean, he's not an idiot, but he is an idiot. So, I don't know. It's just, poor Abe's probably just rolling in his grave right now.
Well, and that's the scary thing is because he's got 2 more kids that are, potentially going to the NBA too. So we might have another decade of this guy.
Yeah, I would love to get into the heads of those kids and just watch the video of their childhood. I can only imagine.
Me is these guys are already, it's tough enough to make it to the NBA. Now it's probably even tougher with a target on your back from the minute you step on.
Well, I mean, come on. I mean, he's not doing that great with the Lakers. I mean, look, I don't know. I think there's the point where you push so hard they do good just to get away from you.
Well, and the thing is, you're right. He's not performing well, and that could be the pressure. That could be the fact that he can't hack it in the NBA. I don't think he was ever the next coming. He wasn't like the next, Jordan James, but
not even close.
But he's been promoted up to that stature by his dad, and it's unfair criticism, and he's supposed to be the best one. So if he's the best one to come out, they don't have a promising future for the Ball family, except for the fact that they might get their 2-3 years in the NBA each.
Yeah, he sets the tone for his brothers, definitely. So, I mean, I hope they all are 4.0 students. I hope they all are getting an education, and I hope under all this nonsense that he portrays, which, I mean, honestly, it does read that way, that the family does push education as well as sports. So I hope they are getting educated, you know. But, I mean, this guy's just a sideshow. That's all he is. Sideshow LeVar.
We'll get used to him. We might be stuck with him for a better part of a decade. So,
no, it's good because I can flip that page just as quick as it pops up.
Anyways, let's wrap it up here. This was a hell of a podcast. We had some good insight. D-Ray, you got some good editing to do here, so I'll let you get on to that as soon as we cut this up. You have any final thoughts on the show?
No, it was great. I had fun.
Good. I'm glad you had fun. My crack research.
I had fun too.
Thank you to my crack research staff over there behind the glass. And Dave, thanks for coming on and providing us with some interesting hot takes.
It was a pleasure. Look forward to doing it again.
All right. That's it for another edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. Check us out on all of our media outlets, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we are going to be up on YouTube here really soon.
Very soon.
Very, very soon. So you can check out the podcast on www.vegassquares.com, and our Twitter feed has our picks each day. We give them out free, no charge. We're not a tout service. So Vegas Squares on Twitter, and our Instagram as well as Vegas Squares Podcast, and we'll catch you next time.